I was born in Juniata County in a small town of Bunkertown, and then when I was 6 months old, we moved to the homestead in McAllistersville. My father was a farmer and a business partner with his brother. I had two older brothers, a younger sister and younger brother. Uh, the oldest and youngest brothers have passed away. I attended a one-room schoolhouse with my uncle. It was a public school, the teacher, and there was no other first grader, so I was placed in second grade. I asked to have first grade, and my uncle said, no, we don't have enough supplies. You'll be in second grade. We walked 1.25 miles to school. In the winter time, which was just one winter that we lived there, my father would hook a horse up to a large root of a tree and plow a spot for us to walk through. The farming and business failed, and we moved to a farmhouse in Blue Ball. I helped the landlord with various jobs, and I usually rode. Their son was a teenager. I would ride in the Alice Chalmers WD. They had a large fender, and I would ride on that fender, and then I would manipulate the manure spreader adjustments and so on. The house had no running water, and it had an outhouse. I also and my brothers helped take care of their cattle down at the barn where we lived. We had no propane. We used coal both to heat and to cook, and so we made a collection of large amount of ashes, and that was one of my first experiences, a near-death experience. The landlord's son, who I used to ride on his fender of the Alice Chalmers, for some reason or other, I was in the manure spreader instead. So he was coming in to pick up the ashes, and there was about a 2-foot grade that he didn't see because the tall grass had shut. And when he hit it, he rolled over. And I was usually on that fender, but this time, for some reason, I guess it was God's leading, I was in the manure spreader. Of course, it was clean because we were hauling ashes instead of manure. And when he rolled over, the connection to the manure spreader broke up, and I rode the manure spreader down the bottom of the hill, then ran back up to him, who was lying on the ground. There was a family doctor at the top of the grade at Blue Ball, and I ran up to him, and he came down and took care of the landlord's son, who had a broken back but was not paralyzed. And so that was why I was on the manure spreader. I think it was because we were hauling ashes and it was clean, but otherwise I may have been killed if I would have rode as I usually did on the tractor. We children had to turn in our money till we were 20, and with my brother's earnings and my earnings, we were able to purchase a house in Groffdale, on Groffdale Road, which had running water and electricity. I begged to go to LMS. My older brothers did not have a chance to do that, and I cried, and I remember begging Dad to let me go. It was a classmate of mine in church, and he encouraged me to go to LMS. So Dad let me go, and that's where I fell in love with Nina or Esther. And we got married and moved to EMC. I had no money because I had to turn it in. Esther worked at Goodville Mutual and had some money, and we bought a house trailer, which I pulled down with. Dad did give us a car, and so I had worked at Siler Chevrolet, and they helped me weld a trailer hitch onto I think it was a 54 Plymouth, and we were able to hook the house trailer onto that and move down to EMC. She was willing to work while I studied. The counselor said I was not aggressive enough to go into medicine, but I stuck with it anyhow, and was able to graduate pre-med. I was accepted then at medical school, University of Pennsylvania, and that's where I was born during the senior year. I interned at Lancaster General, and I was drafted, and so I went to Eastern Board. MCC gave me credit for the service of the draft, and I was under the Eastern Board at Nazareth Hospital in Ethiopia. I worked with Dr. I had these a little out of order. The episode that I wanted to refer to as far as the risk of my life was we had a motorcycle that I had worked on since it wasn't hitting upright. I had worked on it because I had worked at Siler Chevrolet for 2 years and had mechanical experience. It was Siler Chevrolet who wanted to send me to management school, and we decided to get married instead and go to EMC. When I took one of the Bible Academy was about 4 miles. That was the Mennonite high school, and I had taken one of the teachers home on the motorcycle. His wife had given birth to their first child. And on the way back, about a block and a half from the hospital, I had the right of way, but there in Ethiopia, oftentimes the person with the biggest car or truck or whatever chose to try to have the right of way. Well, I came to this intersection. I had the right of way, and I noticed on the right there was a bus which had stopped. I looked to the left, and it was clear, and I gunned the motorcycle. When I looked straight ahead, there was a bus right in front of me. I made a quick turn to the left and slid into the front wheel. If I'd have been a second earlier, I would have been under the wheel, probably would have been killed. A few seconds afterwards, I probably would have been under the rear wheel. But I hobbled to the side of the road, and then I was grabbed by someone. There, you had to wait till the police examined you before you were allowed to be moved. But it was noontime, and one of the workers from the hospital was coming back to work from lunch. And he said, "No, we got to get Dr. Wirt to the hospital." And he hailed a horse and wagon and took me to the hospital, where Dr. gave me a shot of morphine. I felt great. I was ready to work. But I had a broken collarbone, and a broken chip out of my tibia, and my feet were black and blue. I guess the wheels probably ran over my feet. Uh, but after the morphine, I felt pretty good. And after 2 weeks, I was able to work in the clinic, medical clinic, not operate. At 6 weeks, I was able to go back into the operating room. The evening after the accident, the owner of the sugar plantation, it was a Wanji sugar plantation, was owned by the Dutch, and he came and he said, "Send him back to America if you need for treatment." And Dr. Fishman said, "No, I think we can handle it," and he did. That was the second risk. The third was right when Doc was ready to go home. He came around to take me and Esther out to the important people in the area, and they fed us good. Well, a week later, I developed a temperature of 104, and shortly thereafter became jaundice. Dr. also became jaundice, but he cleared up within a week, and then they left for the States. He told me to stay at bed rest until my jaundice cleared. Well, my jaundice didn't clear, and it got worse and worse, and I got weaker and weaker, and I was staying at bed rest, but there's a lady had a ruptured uterus, came in, who was in shock and would never have been able to be transferred to another hospital. And so I operated on her, but I was too weak to close the wound. They brought a chair into the operating room. I sat on there and showed the nurses how to close it up. Well, the next morning, the head of the clinic, of the mission board there, I wasn't doctor, but mission director was, and he came and he said, "Roy, you're not indispensable. We're taking you to the hospital in Addis," which was a Seventh-day Adventist, and they didn't eat meat. They did some blood tests and said that you have to be admitted, but they didn't have any beds. And so they put me on a stretcher in a hall for 2 days. And to get help, I would throw the urinal down to call their attention that I needed something. Finally, they had a room available, and I was in there for I think it was 4 weeks, getting weaker and weaker. They didn't feed me any meat, which you need some protein to build up the liver. You can't take too much or it will fail. So after they fed me sugar balls, and Esther would sneak in the old ham cans, and at nighttime I would take the cans out, and bread that I saved from lunch I would eat, but I still got weaker and weaker. And then after about 4 weeks, I heard some talking outside my room, and then knocking on the door, and put his arms around me. Tears were running down his eyes. He said, "Dr. Worth, it's time to go home." And I thought he meant home in heaven. He said, "There's nothing more that can be done." And Dr. Was taking a residency at Graduate Hospital, and he talked to the chief of medicine, who had been my chief medical resident when I was a student at the University of Pennsylvania. He said, "No, let's admit him here. I think we can do something about it." I was terrible itchy too. The salts of from the liver failure made me terrible itchy. I had scars. I still have the scars in my ankles from itching. So they set up that in 2 days I would leave. Esther was 8 months pregnant, and she had to get everything ready for us to leave in 2 days. We had a stopover in Germany, I believe it was, and then flew into Philadelphia at the Graduate Hospital. When my plane landed on the tarmac, they had an ambulance waiting. It took me to the hospital, and there they fed me protein, and I recovered. And then I was ready to go back, but the Esther's obstetrician didn't want her to go for another 6 weeks. So I worked for a surgeon at the hospital at Lancaster General, and it was a good experience to give me training in surgery. My mother saved all the letters that I wrote home once a week. It was difficult for me to write to not scare them and yet tell them of my poor condition. I'm going to have them typed up. It's hard to read my writing, and then I'll share it with the children, and you can read about. I became quite depressed with all the hard work. They even thought that I was a missionary, that I should be able to preach as well as do medicine, and so I would have devotions every morning with the workers, or even they asked me to go over to the graduate hospital, to the Bible Academy, to preach there as well. So after I completed the service at Nazareth, I was accepted up at Harvard Hospital for a year of it wasn't an internship, but a year of general surgery residency, and then back to the University of Pennsylvania. Said they wanted me, and they didn't have an opening the next year, but they said I could do research. So I worked on, the chief of research was an Army captain, and he had trouble with recruits breaking their hips from walking hard, and we worked in electrical stimulation to heal. I had several papers published. And then after I finished my residency in orthopedic surgery, I wanted to come back to LGH, but there's 2 new orthopedists the following year, and so there was no opening for me. And so the chief of it, Guthrie Healthcare Systems in Sayre, was a good friend of the chief of orthopedics at University of Pennsylvania, and so they invited us up there. And we were there for 20 years, and then
75.
Pardon?
We went up to 75. We came back when you retired in 96. Yeah.
So it's about 20 years, and very happy with the life. We moved to Mount Gretna, and then we had some medical problems. We both had what they call TIAs. They thought it was miniature strokes. We're putting blood thinner and have done good since then, but we thought it would be wise for us to move it to a retirement community such as here. So that's pretty well my story.
Yeah. Thanks.